evening and welcome to this month's edition of The Edge. I'm your host, Trevor Lewington. Thanks so much for joining us here on Jess TV. We don't care whether you're watching on SSH 101 TV or Fire TV or Android TV or, listen, we don't care how you got here. We're just really glad you could join us. Every third Thursday, I'm talking to community and business leaders who are really having an impact here in Southern Alberta. And my guests are always going to share their insights about building your life, building your business, or perhaps building your community. So tonight, ecstatic, Dr. Pardip Athwal is here. Back in Balance Wellness Center is your business. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation. A little nervous that I might, be a little too honest, and if I let a swear out, I apologize.
Okay, well, we like honesty and we like real people,
yes.
So
But I can be professional.
All right,
I'll
well,
keep
that's
it
awesome.
together.
Now, I'm always curious about how people choose Lethbridge. So how did your family, I think, is in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
So how did you land here?
Yeah, so there's a long story, short story, and so I'll maybe give you the medium story.
Sure.
Okay. My family, I grew up in Oakville, Ontario. That's about half an hour outside of Toronto.
Right.
And my dad, let's say hi to my family. My dad lives there, my sister, her husband, my brother. So lots of families still there, lots of aunts, uncles, cousins.
Okay.
And I even think like my friends, right? Like I'm still really good friends with all of them. So that's kind of where I was, and I thought I would be forever. My older sister lives in Victoria, so I thought, if ever I were to move, maybe it would go there.
Because I don't want to be close to somebody,
and
right?
she's like husband, 2 kids, like
Okay.
love my family, love my friends, right? And I moved to Lethbridge on my own, and thought maybe it'd be like a year or 2. So I guess what brought me here. So I had never heard of Lethbridge growing up,
Okay.
ever.
Not shocked by that. Most
Yeah,
people
yeah.
haven't. What's
Yeah.
a Lethbridge?
Yeah, where is that? What is a coolie? That still happens all the time. So after chiropractic college, so I was in school till I was about 27. And I thought in Toronto, life is just very much about, you get your 2 weeks vacation. I'd been in school my whole life. I was like, there's a whole other world out there. And so after, so I didn't come straight to Lethbridge for that reason, but I went traveling. So
Okay.
a lot of my friends, we graduated and they were all looking for clinics to work out of. We had big debts to pay. And I wanted to explore a little bit. So I thought, well, I'll go to some places. So I backpacked. I went through Ireland and Australia. So I spent about 2.5 months in Ireland, like a week in England, a week in Scotland. And then actually came home, changed out my luggage, then had summer clothes for Australia. And so the reason for that was they were English-speaking countries.
So a little easier
as a chiropractor.
as your first, yeah.
Well, no, not even for travel, for chiropractic, because I thought maybe I won't live here. Maybe I won't be in Toronto, right? Maybe I'll just go somewhere for like a year or 2 and come back. So I was thinking, where can I go? And so I actually connected with some graduates from our chiropractic college and visited, stayed with some of them, backpacked, just had fun for about 6 months.
So you were actually thinking about a practice there and
yeah,
establishing
like thinking,
in those
well,
countries?
maybe not establishing, just this is
some
my first time out of here, right? Like I've been in
Gotcha.
school since I was 5, 6, whatever, right?
Okay.
So that's 20
It's a long time.
years.
It's a long
and there's
time.
a big world out there, right? And Toronto's very multicultural, very diverse, but it was just always so busy. And there were things that I just never connected with about Toronto, like the busyness of it.
Okay.
So anyway, all of this to say, brings me to Lethbridge eventually. When I was in Ireland, I would say the thing that I liked the most, that I'd never experienced, was after, shadowing one of my chiropractic colleagues in a clinic in Ireland, we'd go out, have a pint, have some food, but people would show up and like it was very community, right? It was like all these people are showing up, their kids are running around, they're having a pint after work, and all I knew was like commuting an hour and a bit, get home, like barely having any time with your family.
You crash, go to sleep.
Yeah, because you got to get up so early to either commute on the GO train or whatever, right? So it was just busy. So people were like hanging out. And then and my going out experience in Toronto was like clubbing, right, as a student. So you're like going out at 11 o'clock, drinking, and then like home at 2, and the next day's horrible, right? So I'm seeing people just come out, have like a social moment, enjoy their community, and then be home by like 8, 9 o'clock, right? And then start their next day. So that feeling of community is something that I was like, I've never experienced this before. They'd also bring instruments. That was my favorite part.
So
and
there's
they would just,
live
people
music
bringing,
and-
yeah, and there wasn't a band. It was just everybody playing music. So that was possibly, like, when I came back, I was like, I need that again, right? And so I did get home after 6 months of travel. Worked in a clinic in Oakville, one in Toronto, thinking to want big city, suburban, and then didn't love either of them. I think I was there a year and a bit. And so I thought, okay, this isn't it. And so then I did locums. So locums when you cover somebody else's
Right.
practice.
Okay.
So they would go on vacation, but your patient load is still coming in, right? You don't want to stop their care or tell them you have to go to a different chiropractor.
Right. The patients need that continuity.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like a substitute teacher almost, right? Like you go in, but the cool thing, because I still kind of wanted to travel a bit, was that you would go and live, like house sit for them, right? You're a professional, they trust you, so you're going to house sit. Sometimes I would pet sit. I never got pets as a kid, so that was fun.
That's great.
Yeah, I was having all these like experiences that just weren't what I grew up with. And I would go to these clinics. The cool thing too about that, which as a chiropractor, there's so many different types of like techniques you can use. So you would almost have to become a chameleon, right? Because you don't want something completely different.
Right.
So I would go in, shadow for a bit, walk, like they'd introduce me to the clients. We'll be leaving, but you know, she'll be in here.
Understand their,
Yeah, Dr.
sort of
Pardip will be
how
here.
their style and okay.
Yeah, so then I learned actually quite a lot of different techniques and styles just by shadowing.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I would do like 2 weeks or like 3 weeks, maybe at the most, right?
It's a pretty unique way of,
Yeah.
sort of building your own repertoire and
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I wasn't doing this intentionally because I had this great plan, right? I was just like, I'm not ready to stay in one spot yet.
Right.
So, yeah, so I did that and kept thinking, okay, of course I'll stay in Ontario. I want to be close to family. I can come home on weekends or for events. But then I was thinking about that too because the 400 series highway, so glad I learned to drive on that, to be honest, right? But you'd still be stuck in traffic. Right, like on either way.
Yeah,
so
is this the life I want?
Yeah.
Is you're behind the wheel?
yeah. So, and because I had seen other things, right? I have seen all these tiny little towns and everybody's so friendly, and you know, so that was kind of cool. But then I was like, maybe I want to, instead of going to those places. So Ireland, I didn't choose because it was really rainy. It was fall, right? So it was rain all the time, damp. I didn't love that. Australia, beautiful, but like too far away. So I do love my family if I want to come home really quick, right?
Yeah, there's just no easy way to make that trip, right?
Yeah. So when I came back, I thought, okay, this, and then that wasn't it. So then I did these locums. I was like, this isn't it. And so and then I thought, I haven't seen the rest of Canada. I'd been to the East Coast, like did a road trip up there, and I loved it. But they have really like a lot of snow, and so I didn't love that. And so I was starting to realize what I was kind of picky about what I needed. And
selective.
Selective. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's good to know what you want. And I didn't know until I experienced these things, right? So I think like since grade 10, there's like a poster sale. Remember those book sales?
Yes, absolutely.
Scholastic book sales or something. Yeah. So I bought this poster in grade 10, and I didn't remember this until like way later. I'd moved here by then. But there was this poster that had been in some packed up stuff. There was a mountain, a stream. It was beautiful. I was like, I want to live there. That's where I should be. But I didn't know where that was going to be, right? And I forgot all about that. So as I was thinking, okay, I'm still want to explore the West Coast. My sister's in BC, but I had always had this thing about Alberta. Like I felt like I would live here. I had a friend, a really good high school friend, who is in Calgary, and she's like, oh, you're going to move here. And I'm like, no, if I want a big city, Toronto. I love Toronto, right? That's the city I like.
Toronto's the center, right?
It is. Yeah.
Sure.
So Calgary, Edmonton were great, but they weren't, you know, like if I wanted that commute again, right, that's what I would have done. So when I was going to just figure out something in Alberta, because you have to do provincial boards for each, so I was sort of like, I don't want to do all of them. Being from Ontario, you know me a little bit, I'm a little opinionated, and I'm very, like, diversity is important to me. And being from Toronto, you know, very liberal, I'm brown, right? All these things that people are like, you sure you want to go to Alberta? And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe, right? Like, I feel like I do. But a lot of my friends and colleagues were like, you should go to BC. You're a hippie. Like, just go to BC, right? So I was like, okay, I'll go check that out. So I did my provincials for BC, ended up being around my sister while she was pregnant with her first, up in Terrace. And like, so I did, this is a longer story, but anyway, when I was driving, there's one other part. There was a friend of that Calgary friend who was from Lethbridge.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about.
There was a connection.
Lethbridge. Yeah. So when I was driving across the country, I also came down to Lethbridge, checked it out, and I really liked it. There was something about it. I was like, I really like this place. I ended up actually sitting, like, just the friend was off at work, and I went and explored downtown. I was like, oh, this is so cute, and I like this. And it's like all very, compact and lots of little shops and cafes. And I sat in the Penny, which is still one of my favorite, right?
Okay.
Very hip. And I just found it. Nobody told me to go there. So that was sort of my intro to Lethbridge. I checked it out a little bit, liked the feeling, but then continued on to BC. So those places I did, like Prince Rupert. It rained like all through July.
And that's it's a fair ways out there.
I also didn't know Canada had like this rainforest, right? I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's a very
And I mean, here,
spot.
Lethbridge, like it's a desert with rattlesnakes. Like, so weird. I didn't know these things in Toronto.
Only one province away. It's a completely different world.
Like this is the same country, and we have rattlesnakes and rainforests, and I just knew the city.
Right.
So, so I ended up doing like Nelson, but it felt like, too much cloud cover. Needed to be by an airport, because people used to tell me that they would, from Nelson, if they wanted to get out, the flights would get canceled often.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, that's really, I'm from by Pearson. Like, you can go
anywhere in the world.
Yeah. And it's like 40 minutes from my house, right? So all of those things made me kind of go, when I came through again, I think I went through a few times through Calgary and Lethbridge in that 6 months that I was in BC. And I ended up basically just kind of going, sunshine's important to me. Being near an international or a bigger airport. And then the size of the community. So all of that, when I could have renewed again in BC, I had talked to a few chiropractors in Lethbridge, ended up signing on with one and thought I'll be there. I even tried to get the 2-year contract out to 1 year, because I was still convinced I'm going back to Ontario for sure.
Of course.
It's just for fun for a couple
I'll just
years.
do this for a bit.
Yeah. 15 years later, I am still in Lethbridge. So that is what got me here. That's the...
Okay.
Yeah, but what I loved about it was that small town, so the Ireland thing, like the
community,
community,
that feel, right? That vibe of a small
Yeah.
community where you can still talk to a cashier as you go through the grocery line and they have a conversation with you.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my first experiences. It was like at a store, and she talked to me for like 10 minutes. I was like, what is happening right now? We're just having a conversation. Like, you're not rushing me through.
World?
Yeah, so all of those things are kind of, anyway, that's how I heard about Lethbridge. Friend of a friend ended up here.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, we're glad you found us. So, again, you're planning to stay here for maybe a year. You're in your head, you're still going back to Ontario at some point.
Everybody I know is there.
15 years in this desolate, isolated location. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, be nicer.
Away from friends and family. So, keeping health professionals in particular in a smaller center like Lethbridge is sometimes challenging. So, what was the glue that sort of held you here?
Yeah, so really community.
Okay.
Like, it really was the people that I met, right? So I was told it's going to be very conservative, very religious, very, like, you're not going to have the same mindset as people. And some of that was really interesting to me, because when I did move here, and I had people who'd never, there was one, like a person who, by no fault of anybody's, right? Like, this is where he was born. He lived on a farm. He was working, like, I was working on his back pain, and he kept kind of looking at me a little funny. And I sort of was like,
did
I know. And he actually, like, I finally just said, because I knew, I was like, have you ever seen anyone who's not white? And he was like, no. Because he was, like, in his, right?
Yeah.
And I was just blown away by it, right? But then I was like, ask questions. Like, do you have questions? He's like, yes. And so it wasn't like he was, and there's no racism. There was nothing like that.
It was genuine
just like,
curiosity.
Yeah.
This
like,
is
imagine
a new
being born somewhere that's like a smaller little farm area here, and the family farm just keeps getting passed through.
Right.
Like, why would you know anything but what's in your little community, right? So part of me was just like fascinated by that, right? And like, I love educating. Like, that was one of the reasons I was either going to become a chiropractor or a teacher. But I was like, as a chiropractor, I can teach people things. As a teacher, I shouldn't adjust people. So, that was sort of
don't mix those two things up.
Yeah, but the being able to like talk to people and let them feel like they can actually ask questions and not feel nervous to do that, right? So that was interesting to me. But then as I got to know people, one of the first places I joined was like a dance studio in town. Okay. And because they offered Bollywood, and I thought, oh, this is hilarious, right? Who's going to teach me Bollywood? Yeah. And it's Amina Dance, Lizanne. She's wonderful. She literally teaches such a beautiful traditional style of dance.
Okay.
And so that was really cool. So the music, again, like I was getting into that. And then that community, I still have friends to this day that I met in that first, I think I moved here January 2009. I started there in May of 2009.
That's amazing.
And then I ended up doing the dance show, and I'm not like a trained dancer by any means. I didn't grow up dancing, but she makes it accessible for a lot of people. So that was like a community of people I started to, you know, I was like doing things that, again, it's 5 minutes from home, right? I'm not paying crazy amounts to park and to drive downtown and to all the Toronto things, right? And so that was really nice. And then getting into the live music, so like going to Slice and the Owl, like those are places I was like, what are these places, right? And then you see the same faces. And then, so the community and the people, I would say, have been like the best part. But my patient base as well, like I love them. I have such a great time when I'm at work. Like I love what I do, but the people are so great. And I think they're drawn to different, you know, you're drawn to whoever you're drawn to, right? But what I found out with the locums that I was doing, you wouldn't see consistency. So if somebody was like, oh, this technique, what you're doing is actually working for me. And then I'd be like, okay, bye forever. I hope you do okay, right?
Hope you can find that with somebody else.
Yeah, right? And so there was that consistency that I had in Ontario when I had worked there for a year or so. Then locums were just like, you know, you're here for a minute and then you're gone, right? Sometimes you'd come back to the same clinic, but again, for a week or two. So that I really enjoyed, was seeing the consistency of care. So I would say overall, yeah, what kept me in Lethbridge is quality of life too, not commuting, right? That was really huge. Cost of living, like the houses, right, in Ontario compared to Lethbridge specifically. Yeah, it was just so many things. And I still went home 2-3 times a year to make sure I was seeing everybody, right, and keeping that connection going.
And it's only a 4-hour flight, so it's not a huge big
it's
deal.
8 hours door to door. Like literally when I leave my house, either drive to Calgary or even use Lethbridge Airport and got picked up in a cab or dropped off, whatever, or parked there. Yeah, it would, you know, the wait times, the layovers and everything. It was 8 hours door to door. So I guess like a work day.
Yeah,
I could be home in a day.
I can do
that.
that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, and then I kept thinking about maybe going back when I eventually expanded, and that was a moment. I was like, am I staying or not, right? So I guess I'm here.
Nice. Well, that's
I do love
that
it. I love the people. Yeah.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit in terms of talking about your business. So Back in Balance Wellness Center. Yeah. And, you know, I think it comes back to some of the comments you've already made about looking at the whole person, and maybe you can talk a little bit about your philosophy, but also how, you know, you've established this business and sort of what you wanted to put into it, how you've kind of created this thing.
Okay. Yeah, so Back in Balance it was a lot of places you'll see it's something chiropractic clinic. And I also practice acupuncture, right? So I wanted it to be a wellness center because not everything works for everybody, right? Okay. So I still think everybody should go for chiropractic. I really do. Everybody should get an adjustment. That's totally legit. Everybody should get for the whole profession, right? It's wonderful. But that's not the be-all, end-all, right? So I wanted people that were like the massage therapists, the energy workers, the acupuncturists to feel like it was their space too. It wasn't like they were working at a chiropractic clinic, right? So for me, that was something I wanted, was to make everybody feel like it was their space as well as practitioners. The reason I wanted to open my own, I was working out of a bunch of different clinics and kind of had all these, like, noticed different things that worked and didn't work. When I was here, there were just certain things I wanted to add to the spaces, and maybe they weren't open to it because it was their clinic, right? That's what they wanted to do. And so then I sort of was like, I think I just need to make my own. I need to create my own. Had a freak out at that point too, because I drove here with just what was in my Toyota Corolla. And so now I'm like, been out and buying things. Now I have too much stuff and I won't fit in my car if I gotta leave tomorrow, right? And people are like, you'll be fine. Like,
but
you
all
can
of a
sell
sudden
things.
It's real, because you for a while you were able to be a nomad of it, and it was portable, and now all of a sudden
this is
we're
like for
putting
real.
down
It really
some things.
Yeah, so I was like 3 years into being here.
Okay.
And so, but the reason was that I wanted to create something where people felt like they could come in, be heard. It wasn't like the same, everybody gets the same thing, because that was oftentimes what I would hear, is that you'd go into a clinic and everybody got the same type of adjustment, right, no matter what. And because I had learned all these different techniques and styles, right, if somebody was like, well, I'm nervous about whatever type of adjustment,
right,
well, let's try this instead, right? And so to be able to actually understand that, I think I just, in everybody else's space, I didn't feel like I could really practice that myself. And I had actually graduated from acupuncture before chiropractic. So that connection was really cool, the Eastern philosophy, and like chiropractic is not mainstream by any means in the West, or as received as it should be. It's very science-based, it's completely anatomy-based, right? But it's just not always what people think to do, or they didn't grow up doing it.
Yeah, so it's been around for over a century, years, right? Yeah. But it's again not necessary if you haven't experienced it. Or
yeah, and I didn't go to chiropractor growing up, right? Like that was new. So yeah, but just to be able to create a space that was sort of able to have someone come in and us be able to direct them to maybe what might be something for them and give them different options. So that's something I felt hadn't been there. And I wanted to have a cohesive team where we were all working together. So it was like cross referrals. So if I'm working on the joints, or like acupuncture is great for like anxiety, depression, stress, digestive system, but it's also really good for the muscles, right? So like that's the Western and the Eastern. You can do a bit of both. But oftentimes people will come for their adjustment, get their massage, right? And so it's like a one-stop shop. And I felt like that didn't exist in Lethbridge anyway, that I had found at the time. Now it does. Like now there's lots of places like that. But
you were sort of leading the charge in that sense. And
I mean, and I don't know that I was, right? Because I got here, I mean, maybe other people were doing that. I just hadn't come across it, right? I don't think I was like the first to do it. By any means, I'm not taking that, because I'm sure people have been here way before, you know, doing that, but just from within. Right. Also, we didn't have social media, right? Like, so I mean, maybe this was happening. I just hadn't come across it in the chiropractic clinics that I had noticed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk, I think at different events and different places, about your belief in the body's innate ability to heal. And so you sort of see wellness as your job is to help the body do its own thing as opposed to this outside intervention. Can you maybe talk what you mean by that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So this is all about chiropractic. So there's different styles of chiropractic. And if chiropractors are listening to this, like they'll know exactly what the assumption is, that innate ability means something, like a certain type of chiropractic. So I would say there's like pain-based, where if you hurt, you go in, see you again next time you hurt yourself. Then there's like, come in and see me, there's, you know, all these misalignments or subluxations in your body, but you might need to come 3 times a week for months and months and months, right? And then there's the whole middle, right? In the middle. And what I've always, and that's where I fall, is like maintenance, wellness, prevention care, getting you out of pain first, because that's usually what brings people in. But I don't want them necessarily dependent on me, like because I want to keep traveling. So if I'm not in town, right, like I would send them to another chiropractor, of course, in those moments, but 3 times a week didn't fit for my philosophy, right?
Because I think there's a bit of a misconception, or maybe it's, I've heard stories about where you become, no, you've got to come see me every week for 6 months, and then maybe we'll meter it back. But it's like, well, how's
that does work for some people, because that's the other thing, right? Like I don't want to, like I have friends that practice that way. I know people in town that practice that way. Their patients love them. It works for them. For me, this innate ability to heal is teaching your body to just clear itself enough so that you can start doing some of the stuff at home, right?
Right.
But I mean, I still see people every 3 weeks. Like that is my hope, right? Is that people want to maintain what we have done. But getting them out of pain, for me, hasn't been something that needed to be long. It was just that, you know, 3 appointments, let's commit to 3. Like people felt good about that. They're like, let's commit to 3. It's not going to be a one and done, right? Because you may have had this pain for 40 years. So like, I'm not going to magically fix this.
There's no instantaneous cure.
Yeah, and sometimes there is. I get a great release and they feel amazing, right? But then when they hurt themselves again, and those are usually people that I'll like see 3 years apart, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, so that thing you keep talking about, where you use your spine every day, all day long, right? You sit all day, you drive truck, you stand at a counter, you do, you know, you dance, you play sports, you do all these things. You're using your spine. We get our eyes checked, we get your teeth checked, you do everything else, you get your annual physicals, but what about your spine, right? Like it contains your brain and your spinal cord. So the innate, so the innate ability to heal, though, is like you think about things like eating. Like you eat food, your body knows what to do, right? It knows how to process it, it knows how to take the nutrients, it knows how to separate the waste product, it knows how to do that innately. Like it's just your own body's ability to adapt, to change, to be able to heal itself. And one of the big things is a lot of people use pain medications, right? That's kind of a go-to in the Western world.
For sure it is.
And it's great when needed, right? It's great to get you out of a pinch. But if then all of a sudden you're having 8 a day, like 8, whatever medication you're on, and the pain's still there, and like, is there maybe some other way, right? If we could clear the system, and the brain can actually talk to the body through the nervous system that's not impinged by either the muscles, like the joints, the muscles, and so that's where the massage comes in, or the acupuncture comes in. Like, it's not just chiro for me, it's like the combination of everything.
Right.
But I do think if you can live, and oftentimes people come in, and I'm over 40 now, right? So people will be like, I'm 40, this is just what we have to deal with. I'm like, I don't, right? Like, I'm not at the best health of my life, but I don't have pain.
You're like, I don't accept that
Yeah,
number
I
or
do
that
not
excuse.
accept
Like, no.
it. Yeah, so like, is there a way that if you were adjusted more, if you drank more water, if you ate different foods, if you walked more, if you,
Right.
but our jobs, again, keep us sometimes locked, right, into like one position for a long time, or no time to do stretching and all the other things.
Right.
So yeah, so the innate ability to heal for me is just, how can we get your body to learn, and it's different for everybody. I don't think, like, it's not cookie cutter for me. Like, one person, I love that, like, new patient, like, ooh, what's going to happen today?
What can I
Yeah,
help you with
what are
today?
we going to do,
Yeah.
right? And what are you coming in with? And is it just I kinked my neck because I slept funny on the couch last night? That could be it, right?
Great.
Or it could be like trauma from childhood and all these things. And I've done a lot of other work with like yoga and trauma care and all these, lots of different things.
Yeah, because you do have to look at the whole person, and you do have to sort of think about all
believe
of the
that.
potential implications.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting from
Yes.
you.
Yeah, in the way that I practice, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm assuming out there, our audience tonight, there's probably some folks that are struggling with wellness and whatever aspect of their life.
Yeah.
And finding a solution and finding the right path can sometimes be elusive. So what advice would you have for people who are trying to find a solution? Is there things we can do at home? Is there a place to start? Like, what would you...
The answer is call back and balance.
Clearly.
and then we'll talk about what's going on for you, right?
Right.
So that would be step one. But any chiropractor, whoever because there's so many great people in town, right? All different healthcare. So whoever your family's favorite person is, right? Like, it is okay to go and talk to somebody, right? Like, there's so much. We went to school forever, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of information we have. So for you to try to figure it out on your own is somewhat difficult. But in terms of chronic pain, if you have that, and this is not the route, people want to choose to go, I would just look at your day. Like, start by looking at, like, how often am I moving throughout my day? If you're not moving, right, that lubrication through the joints are not going to be there. Then things stiffen up. Then you get arthritis. Then like, there's things that can happen just from lack of movement. There's a lot of genetic things, of course. That's completely different, right? That's where medications are necessary, and
sure.
You might not ever be pain-free. That also exists, but there's ways to manage it, keep it low. So I would say looking into what feels right for you, like check into some of those natural health options, but at home, not spending money. There's so much on YouTube. Like, start doing...
The internet's a beautiful thing.
Oh, hey, we're on YouTube right now.
The internet's a beautiful thing.
That's really funny. So I often tell people, like, they're like, okay, well, what kind of yoga? So I will give people yoga stretches to do after an adjustment. But they'll say, okay, well, what studio should I go to? What should I do? And, like, I've done my yoga teacher training back in 2014. And now I'm doing it again, actually, right, locally.
Good for you.
And so, yeah, and it's great. So and the reason I'm doing it now is, again, because I have this space now that I have a yoga space that I want to be able to get people to enter without feeling like they have never done yoga, so I can't go to a yoga studio, right? So there's this nervousness and fear.
Any new activity.
Totally, yeah. So, but YouTube has so much, right? Like, so if you just need stretches, like, just type in 5-minute yoga, back pain, right? So whatever your pain is, whatever the chronic pain that you have, can you stretch it out? Water is huge, right? Supplements are great.
Right.
Eating the right foods. So it's work you have to do to change the habits that might have gotten people to where they are. If it's that chronic pain that's just from lack of movement or not having proper nutrients, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's just, I mean, we all know what we're supposed to do. And then...
Guilty, yes.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And so we know what we're supposed to do. We don't always do it. And that's okay too. Like, I'll often say, like, we all went through a lot of stress lately, right? So, like, give yourself grace. It's okay, right? That you're not. But if you're stuck in this chronic pain cycle, we have to change the habits to change the system so that the brain will let go of those constant pain signals being sent.
Right, because what got you to that point, unless you change that, you will simply continue along that same path, right?
Yeah, so we don't want that for people.
No, good.
Yeah.
I'm curious a little bit now, again, part of this show is about how people like yourselves are changing their community or they're changing their business. And so, what about you? So you've got this demanding business that you own. You're a growing practice, lots of clients who probably, have needs and expect them to be taken care of at their schedule.
Right.
So how do you yourself focus on your own well-being and wellness? How do you balance the demands of the how do you you don't, okay.
Yeah, today, this might not be the best time of my life to ask these questions.
Okay, well, we're going to have an
but
intervention
that's okay.
here
This
for
is
you.
why it's called Back in Balance, right?
Right?
So the other thing, too, the funny thing about balance, a lot of people, especially currently, speaking about mental health, a lot of people are like, well, there's no way to balance, right? Balance is you can do everything and you do it perfectly, right? I've got this balance in my life. I have this great social life, great relationship, great time with my kids, great
I would love to
job,
meet that human that's accomplished that.
Right, and I think people all think, there was a moment when people started talking about balance not being attainable. I was like, uh-oh, what have I called my place, right? It's back in balance. It doesn't work anymore.
Right.
But I was like, there's a different, it changes at different periods of life, right? So if you're a new mom, you're not going to be socializing with your friends as much right now. You're going to maybe meet some mom friends, or you just want to hang out with your little baby, right? That's totally okay. And so to not have all of those things, that's okay. It's just you want to ebb and flow with whatever's happening in life.
And realize it is an ebb and a flow, and there's not a perfect standard or one solution.
Right. So it's you don't want to be over here or over here, but if this happens, right, and there's a peak and a valley sometimes, right?
Okay.
But you're still aiming for trying to balance. So what do I do for that? I would honestly say yoga is the thing that's kept me sane through all of.
That's how you rejuvenate. That's where you find your quiet moments.
Yeah, well, breathing, right? So that's another thing that chronic pain and all of that. If you can't connect to your body, if you don't even know that you're, why something hurts or how it got there, it's just always been there. It's so hard to be able to then get help with that, right? You don't know where to go. But I think what people forget when I said things like water or whatever, I should have been saying your breath, right? To actually connect to your breath again. We take such shallow breaths all the time. And especially if you're not active, then, your lung expansion, it's all very shallow. So to actually be able to maintain some sort of semblance of calm, right? And sanity, I think for me, it has been meditation, breath work. A lot for me is having fun, right? So being playful, going out
work
with
hard, play hard,
having a community, right? So I love going out to watch live music and dance and enjoy and laugh with people. And I think people are so serious, right? They're so serious. We sometimes have these conversations where all of a sudden it's just it doesn't have to be serious all the time, right? Serious topics, but it doesn't have to be serious all the time, right?
Don't take yourself too seriously. Take whatever you're working on serious, right?
Right. Yeah, of course. There's times to be focused, but there are times where, does everything have to be that intense all the time, right?
That's fair, yeah.
And so, again, I think for me, it's my really great friendships that I have, my great conversations I have with patients that aren't friends outside of there, but just being able to actually have this banter that fuels me, right? And knowing that what I'm doing is helping people is huge, right? That for me is something that I'm okay, I know this person feels better and their life has changed because they're no longer in pain, right? And that could have happened again at any chiropractic office, at any medical professional's office, wherever, right?
But for you to see that your touch and your knowledge is empowering or changing someone's situation.
Yeah, that's how can you not be excited by that, right?
Right.
So for me, that's something that continually keeps me going. People talk about retirement, and I'm I think I'd still be adjusting people on the beach though, right? I would still want to make sure they're feeling good because I just know how great that is, right? Or putting acupuncture points in or talking about meditation and yoga. So anyway, for me, a lot of it is connection, which I think a lot of people lack, right? They have their few people, they go home, they're married, that's the only person. Their work people, do they like them? Do they not like them, right? Those are your people around you. You might not, be in the best mindset.
Right.
And so for me, mindset's huge. And then there are also times I don't want to go to other people for that, right? I need to be able to connect to myself.
For sure.
And so that's like having that quiet time to like reflect on, sorry, what is working, what's not working, how often, like how long will it take before I do start doing a certain really good habit again. But also with a lot of what, like for me in my life, everything went crazy, right? Like 2020, the expanding the business. Like, so I was at one location 2012 when I opened, and then 2018 is where I was like making all these plans and it was great and I'm going to expand. And then 2019, my mom passed away. That was really hard. So I was in Ontario a lot, but like I'm supposed to be excited about this expansion, right? Then March 2020.
Yeah, this small thing called COVID happens.
Yeah, and so financially you're like, okay, I got to work extra right now to make sure that this is all contained and managed. I need more money, and that didn't happen, right? And so, and business owners, entrepreneurship, like we know, right? Like people understand what happened. And so I like will flat out say I'm so grateful for the connections I have, because like my family's helped me financially when I was in need. My friends have helped. Like they're like, and to me again, this isn't to me something to shame, right? Like I know how much I bill every month. I know that I'm not like sitting on my butt doing
it's part
nothing,
of the process.
Right?
This is just part of the
evolution
evolution of your business.
And I'm grateful about like having that with the friends and family that I have.
Right.
The trust, the ability to kind of go, I'm in a bind and nobody could have planned this. Like I didn't, there's horrible timing, right?
Right.
But in that, to be able to actually connect with the people, right? Be able to actually say like when you need help, ask for help, and be somebody who like, I mean, I borrowed money from my parents like in school, because I was in school so long, but I paid it back, right? So like they have a pattern at least with me, right? To go, she should be paying this back.
She's paid us back. We know where she lives. And, you know,
right? So like I'm not going to be somebody who, so that I hope anyway, I put some people's minds at ease, right, at the time.
Right.
But I would say all of that sort of gets us to the place of, I don't even know what we're talking about now.
Well, I mean, I was just asking you about the balance piece and how do you take care of yourself while being a business owner and an entrepreneur and all those demands. Yeah,
so all of that, what I was going to say is it's been so hard that there were times that rest was more important, right? Like if I just slept, because I'd been taking care of people all day long who also are scared. You're not supposed to be 6 feet, like you're supposed to be 6 feet apart, but I'm touching people all day long. Right? So like,
and no one really knows at that point what this thing is, how bad it is. Like, what, I can't even imagine.
So I was like, amazing. I'm like able to be in my little cocoon, but now I've got to go out and like touch all the people, right? And I don't know what they do all day long. And I mean, we did masking and hand sanitizing and everything correctly. But still, right? It was kind of weird to get back into that. So then everybody else's stresses, right? Because they were all like, oh my gosh, like I'm nervous about coming in, or I'm so glad I can finally come in, or I'm not seeing this person, or I've had a fight with so-and-so, like all the things that happened in that time. So when taking care of others all day long, right, I was like, I just need to rest, right? So going to the gym was not something I had the energy for, right? And I didn't want to burn out, because burnout is huge, right? Especially in this time where things are stressful, and for entrepreneurs and women and, you know, like it's just a thing that if I got there, I really wouldn't be able to pay people back. Right? So I can't burn out, right? Like I don't have a luxury to burn out. I don't have like a,
that's not an option, right?
There's as an entrepreneur, I don't have that luxury, right? So then it was sort of giving grace. Like, what's the balance I can handle right now? How do I keep myself balanced? I can always breathe. I can always talk to my friends and my family, right? I can always rest. Right? And then I can try to make food at home and, you know, but even that, like that was something like where, like I'm friends with Chef Stella, right? Lethbridge, you know, but dropping all these names here. But yeah, like they would come in for treatments and I would get food from them. It was amazing. Right?
Sounds like a great partnership.
Pretty amazing. So things like that where the food was homemade and delicious and, you know, but then they're like also entrepreneur, stressful restaurant, right? So like, how can I de-stress you? How can, like, it was just that connection again with your community, right? That helped get me through anyway.
Now, I mean, entrepreneurship is a journey, and your business is Back in Balance has been around for 12 years now.
Yes.
So, you know, as you look back on those 12 years, are there any sort of lessons as a business owner that you would tell other entrepreneurs, or is there, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, you go, I would have
Right.
totally done that
Right,
different.
right. So other than COVID, right? Which
Yeah, I mean,
there was no way to know.
things that were in
right?
your control in terms
Yeah,
of how you've
yeah.
developed your business.
So I would say the first, like, I tend to jump into things. So hindsight wise, and if I could, and what I tried to do this time, that was the even more ironic thing, was that I do tend to jump into things. So
Okay.
I didn't want to renew at the clinic I was at for that in year 3 of being in Lethbridge. So I may as well just open up my own thing. Within like 2 months, I was like, I'm going to be in this place. Let's renovate. Let's do the thing. And like just working at the old place, going in here. Like, and so, you know, a policies and procedures binder. Like all the things I didn't want to do because I like talking to people. Right?
But now you're all grown up
Yeah.
and you're a business owner, right?
Yeah. So I was, but that's not going to make me money, right? But seeing patients is going to, you know, pay the bills. So like,
Right.
where am I going to spend my time, right? So that was maybe not the best start, right? There was so much happening. So when I was going to then expand, I really intentionally in 2018 was like, you are going to have everything in place before these doors open. And then it's like, you're so funny,
Sure you are.
universe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You're just going to make the construction start in 2020, but they're going to keep going. So you still got to pay them, right? And then like, you're still working in all these places. So I tried that time to actually do things where everything was lined up correctly.
Right.
Now, social media, website, all of that, I'm horrible at that stuff, but I wanted to have that all up and, you know, planned before. But then while the world is like in chaos and I've still got to work, that didn't happen. And it is years later now. So you think that should be something that you could have done, but it's just been go, 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 right? So now I have a really great team that I'm like, can you do this for me, right?
Right.
And I still have problems because if they watch this, I have a problem relinquishing control, right? Because I have always had the ideas, right? But
Right.
I'm hiring people because I know they're great at what they do. So I also need to trust that, right? And that's where we're at now is I'm like, we need to be better at this, that, and the other, right? So I still have to see the patients, but can you plan all the things I don't want to do, right? That you're really great at and
But it's
is
still
your
your baby,
skill
right? So
set.
you're also feeling like,
Yeah.
at what point
Yeah,
do I...
and I've done that before. Like there have been stuff. I'm like, here, do all the things, and then when it didn't get done, or it didn't get done the way that I thought it was going to get done, and then that, you know, throws things off too.
Of course.
And so it's just like that trust level as well. But so I would say for anybody venturing into it, the one thing I love is that like I'm passionate about it, right? We're
Right.
busy. It's good, right? Like that part's good. Or myself anyway, there's again lots of rooms. So, you know, if anybody, this is great. If anybody's a massage therapist wants to work with us, but anybody who has the same mindset, right? Like getting that type of mindset, energy workers, like we have Body Talk in the space. There's lots of stuff that's in the space that fits in that, right? Like that's the kind of people I want is like good team, like team mindset.
And you've talked about that interdisciplinary approach, and so you need those different skill sets.
Yeah, and like people that
right?
like actually like they go, you know, like if you're going to be in the space but you've never been adjusted or you've never, you know, like
Right.
it's fine, it's happened many times, but it's just something that I find I'm like, it's right here for you, right? And then like you don't know what you don't know. It's like maybe then you're like, oh, my patient's stuck here, maybe I cross refer, I give them to this person, and then they'll always send them back, right? Like we're not
Right.
trying to steal patients, it's, you know, like trying to give some a holistic treatment. So yeah, all of that I think has gotten us like to this point where, like I think if things had been planned, if I had the luxury to have planned things better, then I would have had like the team in place. And again, that was hard at the time for me specifically because people were like worried about paying rent somewhere, right? Because
Right.
are they going to get shut down again? Massage therapists couldn't. When I opened in June of 2020, it was only me. I created this massive space, and I was
Lovely,
the only
beautiful
one.
building, and
Yeah,
you're
and I was
wandering
the
the
only
halls.
one who could work there because massage had been shut down, and
Oh,
like, yeah, they could
course.
not, right? So it was again very ironic, funny little universe. But yeah, so what I would say, hindsight wise, and what I'm now trying to do in the future, is actually look at the big picture, then break it into those small steps. See where you can get help and support with people.
Right.
Maybe save a little bit more money on the front end so that when things go,
Cash flow's
you
good.
know,
yeah.
and again, thought that would be a thing in my situation, then it wasn't, right? Because couldn't make any money. So that's sort of what I would say in hindsight. If I could have just been more patient, not wanted what I wanted the moment I wanted it, right? And just actually paused right?
Right.
And done that. Now, again, in this situation, I mean, there was somebody purchasing the building, and there was like all these other things like I wasn't going to back out of, right? So I was just going.
Yeah,
going,
you are
I'm doing
committed
it
at
now.
that point.
I could have backed out, I guess, right? But that just it's not something like that. Doesn't feel
Right.
integral to me, right? Like, so yeah. And I wanted the space that I'm in now, so I'm gonna make it work.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you and I have talked before in another venue about sort of the challenge of leadership and employees and meeting expectations, but also the challenge sometimes of being disappointed. So, have there been sort of lessons or sort of experiences that through that whole process? Because that's got to be a bit of a, from being a sort of a practitioner, a healthcare professional,
Right.
and then being a business, you're still
owner.
that, but now you're the
Yeah,
owner.
and that is something where often people will say, like, when are you going to stop practicing and just run the business, right? Because it's the working on the business while you're working in the business.
Always the classic challenge.
Exhausting, right? Because like, there's not two of me. I wish there were, right? But
Yeah.
like, I want to put all that energy into the working on the business part. But so I think with employees, I mean, I have high standards in my space, right? Like, I want everybody that comes in here, the one thing I will say is all of my admin, whether they worked out or not, they were friendly. They were so, like, that was a requirement, right? Like, I'm like, I need to hire people who are kind humans because it'll just come out of them, right? So, like,
Right.
that for me was really important. But then it might have been like, hey, but you're not getting this work done that I need you to do, or you're kind of slacking on this, or there's dishonesty, or there's, like, whatever the case might have been. I hate drama. Like, you create drama, and I'm like, you can leave, right? Like, I don't want
Don't
that.
have no patience for that.
No. However, I feel, and this could be wrong, because I generally think, like, if there's like hundreds of people that like me, there's like some that really don't like me. And I think it's because I hold my boundaries, right? So if you are going to create drama in my workspace, like, if it's different outside of there, but like in my workspace, if you're going to be mean to others, if you're not going to be a team player, if I'm going to ask you to do something, you're just not going to do it, like,
This
there
is
has
my
to
workspace.
be
This
a
is my business.
Yeah, and I have to be your boss, right? Like, I
Right.
want to just be like the happy-go-lucky chiropractor that I am with my patients.
We're buddies.
Yeah, and I want that. Like, I have a problem with that, like, separation of being friends with your employees or your coworkers, right? Because people are like, you just can't. And I'm like, but I want to hang out with these people. Like, they're with me all day long,
I
right?
spend more time with you than some of my other
so like, I don't need
friends.
to hang out with them outside of there, but if that just naturally happens because we're very similar, like, why would it not?
Right.
So I understand, and then that has created problems in the past, or it's been like the best friendships ever, right? So that kind of depends on generally what happened in the workplace, right? Like,
Right.
what then, if I had to stand up and say, as the employer, as you're supposed to be allowed to do, right? But and what I found too is, I mean, I was in my 30s, right, opening, and some of the people are the same age as me, right? So there was some of that, like, who are you to tell me what to do?
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, age perceptions of what your boss should be or should look like or behave like.
And then I'm going to have the conversation about male and female, right? Like, as a female business owner, like, I don't get called assertive or, like, strong. I get called the B word.
Yeah, there's another
I get
word we
called,
use.
like, she's such a blah, blah, blah. See,
Yeah.
I didn't swear. And,
Well done.
yeah, so,
This is
but
live.
but that's sort of where it's not, it doesn't matter how, so I find it interesting sometimes. It doesn't matter how kind you are, how much freedom you give them to, like, have autonomy within their own, once you know it, now it's on you. I don't want to be having conversations about things because I want you to just be amazing at what you do, and you are.
And go do.
But then if you choose not to do the things, or if you choose to, have this toxic environment, like, it's not okay, right? And so that upholds everything else. But I could have, like, a friendship of 7 years with somebody and then just, right? I always find that so interesting. I've always find that so interesting. Like, all the good things, all the whatever. Like,
yeah.
Like, isn't there a conversation? Again, communication, I think, is huge, right? And amongst all the things we've talked about. But to communicate and actually have that conversation, like, this is what happened that bothered me. And I'd be like, I'm so sorry.
Let's this.
Talk about this, right? Like, maybe my tone was off. Maybe, but again, would a man get called out on that, right? It's just not often the case. It's like, either they're not, as a generalization, not as emotional, not as whatever, right? So then, well, when a woman is doing this, like, as a boss who's not, like, in her 60s, so she's,
right.
So similar ages, similar, pretty chill most of the time, but then all of a sudden putting boundaries in place, expecting you to uphold them, being firm and blunt, and you know,
Right.
how that gets perceived isn't always the best thing, right? And so, but I still think that overall, if that, then those people aren't your people. I'm not their person, and they're not my people.
Right. There's a
And that's
different
okay.
environment somewhere else that they're better suited
and that's
to.
okay, right? Like, let's just find our own places, and
Right.
but it doesn't have to end up being something that's like held for years.
Acrimonious and
Yeah.
And like you said, it's interesting how you can have long-term relationships, strong connections,
Yeah.
do a lot of things for a lot of people. And it's that one incident where there's a perception of imbalance or unfairness, and that's it. So,
And sometimes you do one thing, or you hear the other people hear somebody else's version of a story,
of course,
and then all of a sudden they're like, everything matches now to this story, right? I'm like, what story did you create about me? Because I'm pretty sure I'm the same person I was before, right? Still want everybody to come in, get well, have a good time at work. Like, you pick your hours, do what you want. You want to take time off, no problem. Like, I don't know what else you want, right? So if it still doesn't work, then, you know, now there might be comments telling me what happened. But
Right.
yeah, so that is, I mean, it's interesting to me. I find it, like, I'm sensitive, so I get very like, wait, why don't they like me, right? Like, I'm a people pleaser, that's what I do, but I also am like, okay, well, I
you're also
did
the
the
boss.
best I did. Yeah, there has to be like this level of authority. It is my space. I am the one who in the end has to, if I can't pay the rent, if I can't,
Right.
you know, like, it would be great to have the support of everybody instead of the, like, we don't like you because, right? And I'm like, but you're in my space, right? Like, you're, this is kind of like, I'm the one who pays your, like, not the therapist, well, but even there, like, I refer lots of people, right? Like, they're not necessarily like, I want to see that person unless it's through referral, but like coming, the
You're facilitating
reputation
that.
of Back in Balance, or someone comes in for chiropractic, that's all they thought they were going to do, but I'm like, you actually need massage as well, and you should do this, and you should go to, you know, get some acupuncture. You should do whatever else is like physio, which we don't have in this space, but physio, like whatever it is, right? Like I just find those things like it's an interesting thing as a female, which I'm sure this happens to men too, but also.
But there are other considerations, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard to believe our hour's almost up, but that's a bit of a segue for me. I know you believe in community, investing in community. And so you sort of took on a governance role with the board of the YWCA, and somehow ended up being the board chair. So again, that's a female-focused organization, right? And as a female leader during a time of transition and change, can you talk a little bit about that from maybe what you learned or how that experience helped sort of shape you a little bit?
Sure. So I didn't necessarily want that role. It did fall upon me. So I mean, I was on the board for 6 years, so like the 2-3 year terms you can do.
Okay.
And right away in the second year, like, it's a feminist, or I'm a feminist. I'm happy to talk about feminism. I like the word. I don't think it's a bad word, right? We can go into that. That's a whole other hour.
Well, we'll have to have you back for that conversation, I think.
But that one, I think, is it was important. So for me, and again, being somebody who likes to be part of the decision making, I was on the executive in like the second year, right? And so I was like low, but then as you continue, of course, you've had a bit of seniority now, and so I never wanted to be the president of it. And at the same time, there's a lot that was happening in around the community and that organization. And the president at the time just had more things happening in life, right? And so it kind of fell on me. And I would say what I learned from that is that I'm resilient. There's a lot, because this was also when I just opened the business. Right? It was all 2020.
There was a collision of things there,
oh my gosh, yeah. Like those last few years, like that's why I sleep so much, right? But that, and practice yoga, that would be, I think, the biggest thing I learned as a leader is, yes, you need to lead, right? You need to actually be the final, like, it's a vote always, of course, on the board level. But like, you want to be able to at least guide. You have some history, some historical context. You might want to, be able to express that. Again, my opinionated self, though, often tries to like I know what I want the answer to be, right? But I think everybody does. Like, we all think we're right,
of course,
right? Like, that's why we have the opinion we have.
I am usually.
Yeah, right. Me too. So, but yeah, whatever your opinion is, you only have that because you think you are right. And so when you have kind of butting heads about certain situations that happen, there's a lot that was going on. But what I learned is that you need to have a decision that you at least, or a viewpoint, when in the end there's like uncertainty, right? So I never made a decision that was on my own. I used, I made sure to ask the rest of the board to come in with their strengths, right? So
Right.
I definitely, when president fell on me, I had somebody who's in the industry on the board. Like, I need your help. Like, I can't do this by myself, right? And so we co-chaired for a little bit, right?
Oh,
and then
nice.
as we actually got a lot of, what I loved about it was actually connecting to the national office, because they then were helping out Lethbridge quite a lot at the time. And so I got to connect a lot with them and kind of see this as a bigger picture, right? And get a lot of advice from them. And they asked us to be a little more operational at the time, so there was a lot going on there. Anyway, but to now get a leader that is in there, right? So we could kind of go, okay,
Back
go
to a
back
governance
to
role.
governance, right? And so that was, you know, my last year was that person's first year. And so there's still a lot of like information, you know, being passed on
Right.
in historical context. But yeah, so I would say use the people on your team. They're there for a reason. You hired them, or like I didn't hire the board, obviously, but in my employees, right? I hired them for a reason. On the board level, they're there for the strengths that they have. So utilize them, have the conversations. Again, I think with women sometimes when you get into a debate, people take it personally in that situation, or maybe it's my delivery, I don't know. But again, if I have a view that's different, right, then
Right.
that might be something that was not very, you know, that they didn't enjoy.
Right.
But also if you're the lead, you were put in that place, right? So you're going to have maybe a few more words to say about something, right? Because you have more information. So that's what I learned, is to use your team, still have like lead from a place, always with compassion. I felt like I was always making sure I was hearing everybody, but again, checking in with people, right, to know if that is how they felt, right, would
Right.
be something I feel like I did learn at that time too. So
Well,
yeah.
again, hats off to you. I think that organization is far stronger because of your time there, and
Thank
they've,
you.
they've made a lot of progress
Yeah.
Since those days. And so
For
I
sure.
think
For sure.
just
Thank you.
an incredible amount of work went into that. So
Thanks.
as
Thanks.
a business owner, giving back is hard, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think about the enormous time
Yeah.
commitment while you're still trying to manage your business through the chaos of what was happening at the same
It
time.
was a lot. Yeah, I'm
I can
tired. I'm still tired years later. That's why I'm like, furniture's still not here because I don't have the capacity right now, right? But I do think that's where giving people grace, right? Giving yourself grace is really important.
Because it's okay.
Yeah,
It will
yeah.
come eventually on its
Everything-
own time.
Yeah, and like now it's off in other people's hands and they're doing a great job, and like just you gotta trust the process and go into your next flow, right? Whatever that might be. And people have asked, like there's a like Alberta Shelters, like like a bigger asking me to be on the board, and I'm like, I'm so tired still, right? Like I need to focus on my business. So as an entrepreneur, like once it's settled, that's different, right? But I want to be in there creating and doing
Right.
my own thing, right? So I love getting the invites or the, you know, but just right now it's time for me to focus on my little baby.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I
Thank
very
you
much
for
appreciate
having
your time.
me. Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed this perspective. Dr. Pardip Athwal from Back in Balance Wellness Center. Every third Thursday, we're talking to Southern Albertans who are making a real difference in their community. I hope you learned something about building your own life, building your own community. Next month, April the 18th, right here on Jess TV, we'll have the Reeve of Lethbridge County, Tori Campbell, as well as the Mayor of Lethbridge, Blaine Higgin. Both of them will be together at the same table to talk about regional collaboration and how that's taking shape in Southern Alberta and what we can all do differently. So look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining us tonight.